My name is Karl Muller, born and raised in a small village nestled in the Bavarian Alps. From an early age, I was captivated by the mountains' rugged beauty and the tales of those who dared to conquer them. This passion led me to a career as a professional mountaineer and guide, earning respect and recognition among my peers. In the winter of 2015, an expedition to the Swiss Alps changed my life irrevocably. A severe storm struck unexpectedly, and despite our best efforts, one of our team members perished. Accusations of negligence were leveled against me, and amidst the ensuing legal turmoil, I was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Sentenced to 8 years in prison, I found myself behind the cold, unyielding walls of Justizvollzugsanstalt Straubing, a maximum security facility in Bavaria. Life in Straubing was a stark contrast to the freedom of the mountains. The regimented routine, the constant surveillance, and the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on my spirit. I kept to myself, avoiding the complex social dynamics of the prison yard, focusing instead on maintaining my physical fitness and mental acuity. The gym became my sanctuary, and books on mountaineering and survival were my escape. en.wikipedia.org. As the years passed, hope of an early release dwindled. The parole board remained unconvinced of my remorse, interpreting my stoic demeanor as a lack of contrition. The prospect of spending the remainder of my sentence in confinement became unbearable. The mountains called to me in my dreams, their peaks promising freedom and solace. It was then that the seed of escape took root in my mind. I began to observe the prison's routines with a mountaineer eye for detail. The guard shifts, the timing of patrols, the layout of the facility, all became data points in my mental map. I noted the moments when security was lax, the blind spots in the surveillance system, and the complacency that familiarity often breeds. Months turned into years, and my observations coalesced into a plan as intricate and demanding as any alpine ascent. However, I knew that executing such a plan required more than just observation. It required assistance. Trust was a rare commodity in prison, but over time, I formed a bond with Dieter, a fellow inmate with a background in engineering. Convicted of white-collar crimes, Dieter possessed a keen intellect and a shared yearning for freedom. We spent countless hours discussing our lives, our mistakes, and our dreams of escape. Together, we scrutinized every aspect of the prison's infrastructure. Dieter's technical knowledge complemented my strategic thinking, and we began to identify potential weaknesses in the facility's security. We knew that any attempt would be fraught with peril, but the alternative, remaining caged like animals, was a fate neither of us could accept. The first step was to gather resources. We discreetly collected tools and materials, repurposing everyday items into implements that could aid our escape. A toothbrush became a lockpick. Bed sheets were braided into makeshift ropes. Each item was concealed with utmost care, hidden in the nooks and crannies of our cells. We communicated in hushed tones, ever wary of informants and the omnipresent surveillance. As our plan took shape, we faced numerous setbacks. Increased security measures, surprise inspections, and the unpredictable behavior of other inmates threatened to derail our efforts. But with each obstacle, our resolve hardened. We adapted, revised our strategies, and pressed on. The prospect of freedom, however remote, fueled our determination. In the spring of 2019, an opportunity presented itself. A construction project within the prison grounds led to the erection of scaffolding near the outer wall, a temporary structure that, if accessed, could provide a route to the outside world. We knew that such a chance might never come again. The time to act was upon us. With meticulous precision, we finalized our plan. The date was set, the roles assigned, and contingencies considered. We were acutely aware that failure would result in severe repercussions, but the allure of the mountains, the taste of fresh air, and the embrace of freedom overshadowed our fears. On the eve of our planned escape, I lay on my bunk, heart pounding, envisioning the journey ahead. The path was fraught with danger, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. As the prison settled into its nightly rhythm, I whispered a silent vow to the memory of the fallen climber, a promise to seek redemption, not just for myself, but for all who had been lost to the unforgiving peaks. The stage was set, the players ready. All that remained was to take the first step into the unknown. The night before an escape is the longest night of your life. Your heart pounds with every sound, every footstep, every distant clang of metal against concrete. You go through the plan again and again in your head, trying to find mistakes, gaps, things you might have overlooked. But deep down, you know the truth. There's no such thing as a perfect escape. Something will go wrong. You just have to be ready when it does. For nearly a year, Dieter and I had been watching, planning, testing. Every prison has routines, and routines lead to weaknesses. You just have to know where to look. The construction project was our golden opportunity. The prison had been expanding one of the exercise yards, which meant scaffolding had been erected along the outer wall. It wasn't fully enclosed yet, meaning there were brief moments when the perimeter was less secure than usual. But getting to the scaffolding was the real challenge. Our cell block was on the second floor, and to reach the construction area, we needed to pass through 2 locked corridors and an open-air passageway that was constantly monitored by guards. That meant 2 things. We needed a way to move unnoticed through the corridors. We needed to time it perfectly. The first problem had a simple solution: work duty assignments. Prisoners in Straubing could volunteer for various labor duties: cleaning, kitchen shifts, laundry, maintenance. Some of these jobs allowed access to restricted areas, including the construction zone. Dieter managed to get assigned to maintenance. That meant he could move near the scaffolding without drawing attention. I got myself on a cleaning duty. That gave me access to hallways, storage rooms, and even guard break areas. Little by little, we started testing the limits of the system. I'd move between locked areas, taking note of which guards were lazy, which took smoke breaks too long, and where the blind spots in the cameras were. Dieter memorized the layout of the construction site, figuring out where the scaffolding met the outer wall and how we could use it to get over. All we needed now were the tools to pull it off. A prison escape isn't like in the movies. You don't just crawl through a tunnel and pop out on the other side. You need supplies, and getting them inside is one of the hardest parts. Between cell searches, informants, and security sweeps, hiding anything in Straubing was a risk. But over time, we built up a small arsenal of escape tools. A stolen screwdriver from the maintenance shed. Small, but useful for loosening screws and locks. A makeshift rope made from torn bedsheets, braided and hidden inside a mattress. A stolen uniform patch from a guard's jacket, just in case we needed to bluff our way past a checkpoint. A razor blade, tucked into a book, in case things got violent. The biggest challenge? Finding a way to cut through the final fence near the scaffolding. The answer came unexpectedly. One of the prison kitchens used thin steel wire to tie meat shipments together. If twisted the right way, it could saw through metal, slowly, but effectively. Dieter swiped a few strands, and we tested them in our cell. It worked. We had what we needed. Now, all that was left was timing. You don't just pick any random night to escape. You wait for the moment when the prison is at its weakest. For us, that meant storm season. Straubing's security relied heavily on motion sensors and perimeter alarms, but bad weather could cause false alerts, making the guards slower to respond. We needed a storm strong enough to create chaos, but not bad enough to cancel construction work. A night when the guards were distracted, like during a big football match or shift change. The perfect night came in late April 2019. A storm had been brewing for days, and the forecast predicted heavy rain and strong winds. At the same time, Bayern Munich was playing a major Champions League match. Half the guards were die-hard fans, which meant they'd be watching the game instead of paying attention. That was it. April 29th. That was the night we would run. The day before an escape, your senses go into overdrive. Every sound is louder. Every guard's glance feels like it lingers too long. But the trick is to act normal. Dieter and I followed our routines exactly as we had for months. We worked. We ate. We played cards with the other inmates. But inside, my mind was a storm of its own. Did we forget something? Had someone noticed us? Was this all about to fall apart? Then, just before lights out, the rain started. It came in sheets, hammering the prison walls, drowning out every other noise. A storm. The match had already started. It was time. At 11:45 p.m., Dieter left for his maintenance shift at the construction site. 10 minutes later, I got up from my bed, walked to the communal sink, and dropped a bar of soap onto the floor. That was the signal. I listened carefully. 2 cells down, I heard the same sound. Dieter was in position. I took a breath, heart pounding, then reached under my mattress and pulled out the stolen screwdriver. I got to work on the vent under my bunk, loosening the screws one by one. When I finally pried the cover off, I slid inside, my body barely fitting through the tight space. I crawled in darkness, moving inch by inch toward the next vent, the one that opened near the back hallway leading to the construction site. If we got caught now, it was over. No second chances. No mercy. I reached the end of the vent, pressed against the metal grill, and waited. Outside, the storm raged. The prison was about to wake up to the worst night of its life, and I was about to disappear forever. I pressed my ear against the metal grill of the vent, heart pounding, waiting for the perfect moment. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, flickering slightly as the storm outside sent shadows dancing across the damp concrete walls. The faint sound of cheering and shouting from the guards' break room told me everything I needed to know. Bayern had scored. A distraction. Perfect. I counted down in my head. 3, 2, 1. I braced myself, then pushed the vent cover forward. It came loose with a soft clink and landed on the floor of the empty hallway. No alarms. No shouts. I exhaled. So far, so good. Now, I just had to move. I slid out of the vent, landing on the cold stone floor in a crouch. I had exactly 3 minutes to get to the construction site without being spotted. The hallway was narrow, lined with metal storage lockers, most of them rusted and dented. The only sound was the distant hum of the generators and the occasional crash of thunder outside. I moved fast, sticking close to the wall, my breath slow and controlled. Ahead, the door to the construction zone. And standing next to it, a security camera. I forced myself to stay calm. We had planned for this. 3 days ago, Dieter had accidentally spilled oil on the camera's power junction box, making it flicker at random times. The guards had been meaning to fix it, but with the construction work happening, it kept getting delayed. I waited. 10 seconds. 15. Then, the screen went black for 3 seconds. I sprinted. I reached the door, yanked it open just enough to slip through, then pulled it shut behind me. I was inside the construction zone now, an open-air section of the prison where new walls were being reinforced. Dieter was waiting for me near a stack of cement bags, his face pale in the dim security lights. "You're late," he whispered. "Camera took longer than expected," I replied. We didn't waste time talking. Dieter had already loosened the bolts on the lower section of the scaffolding, creating a space just wide enough for us to squeeze through. He crawled through first, pulling our makeshift rope of braided bedsheets with him. I followed, my fingers scraping against the rough steel as I wriggled my way through. We were now between the outer wall of the prison and the scaffolding, where the guards never patrolled because it was supposed to be a sealed-off work zone. But tonight, it was our highway to freedom. The scaffolding stretched 10 meters up, leading to a section of the outer wall that hadn't been fully reinforced yet. The plan was simple: climb, cut through the outer fence, drop down the other side, disappear into the storm. Simple, but not easy. The metal bars were slick with rain, making every step treacherous. My hands were numb, my feet slipping slightly with each movement. Halfway up, I glanced down at Dieter. He was struggling. His breathing was too fast, his grip too tight. He wasn't used to climbing like this. "Slow down," I whispered. "One movement at a time. Focus." He nodded, swallowing hard, and kept moving. We reached the top, panting, soaked to the bone. Now came the hard part. The last barrier between us and the outside world was a reinforced steel fence, designed to prevent exactly this kind of escape. But we weren't leaving without a fight. Dieter pulled out the steel wire we had stolen from the prison kitchen. It was thin but strong, and we had sharpened it over the past few weeks. We got to work, sawing through the bars, inch by inch. It was agonizingly slow. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then, "Hey, who's up there?" A guard's voice. My blood went cold. I turned my head sharply, spotting the guard below us, a flashlight beam cutting through the rain. Then came the sirens. We were out of time. "Faster," I hissed. Dieter's hands were shaking, but we had almost cut through enough of the fence. Another piece snapped. Then another. And then it gave way. No time to celebrate. We grabbed the rope, tied it around the last bar, and dropped down the other side of the wall. We hit the ground hard, rolling into the wet grass. Behind us, guards were rushing onto the scaffolding, shouting into their radios. Floodlights flicked on, cutting through the darkness. "Go. Now," I shouted. We sprinted into the night, disappearing into the storm. We didn't stop running for at least an hour. The rain masked our tracks, but we knew the search teams wouldn't be far behind. Eventually, we reached a thick forest near the edge of the town. We collapsed under a canopy of trees, breathing hard, the cold seeping into our bones. Dieter looked at me. We did it. I didn't answer, because I knew the truth. We weren't free yet. Not even close. The entire country would be looking for us. And the only way to survive now? Keep running. The storm had been our ally, covering our tracks as we ran into the woods. but it wouldn't hide us forever. By now, every police department in Bavaria had our names, faces, and descriptions. Straubing's prison break was already on the news. They wouldn't stop until we were found. But I didn't plan on being found. Not ever. We stayed in the forest, moving deeper into the trees, far from roads, houses, and patrols. Every time a flashlight cut through the dark, we dropped to the ground, hearts pounding, waiting. Dogs. We could hear them in the distance, barking, sniffing, searching. The rain had washed away our scent, but by morning, the weather would clear. Then, we'd be nothing more than prey. Dieter shivered. We need to keep moving. If we stop, we're dead. I nodded. But we had another problem. No food, no water, no shelter, and no time to find any of it. By sunrise, we reached the edge of the forest, near a small farming village. If we wanted to disappear, we needed new clothes, new identities, and a way out of Germany. A roadblock had already been set up, 2 police cars and officers stopping every vehicle. They weren't just looking for us. They were expecting us. We can't cross, Dieter whispered. But I had an idea. A farmhouse stood just outside the village, a tractor parked outside, laundry flapping in the wind. Perfect. We crept toward it, sticking to the tree line, waiting. The farmer's wife came outside, collected a few pieces of clothing, then went back in. The moment the door shut, we moved fast. We grabbed 2 sets of work clothes, yanking them on over our wet uniforms. Dieter took a hat. I found an old jacket. Then, we walked right into town. Like we belonged there. Like we weren't 2 fugitives, running for our lives. A delivery truck sat parked near a gas station, the driver smoking a cigarette, chatting with another man. The back doors were unlocked. We slid inside, hiding under crates of vegetables and old burlap sacks. Moments later, the truck rumbled to life. We were moving, away from Straubing, away from the prison. But we weren't free yet, because the news was spreading. And soon, the whole country would be looking for us. We dozed in the darkness, exhaustion finally catching up. But then, the truck slowed. A checkpoint. We tensed as voices rang outside. Where are you headed? Munich. The driver answered casually. Step out of the vehicle, please. Footsteps. Doors opening. Then, a flashlight flicked on. A beam of light cut through the back of the truck. It passed over the crates. Then it stopped. Right where we were hiding. The officer took a step closer. I held my breath. Dieter's fingers tightened around my arm. Then, clear. The light swung away. The doors shut. And the truck kept moving. Neither of us spoke for the next 10 minutes. We didn't need to. We had been seconds away from being caught. And I knew something for sure now. We couldn't stay in Germany. We had to leave. Fast. The truck dropped us near Munich, and by nightfall, we were at the train station. Our destination? The Austrian border. If we could cross into Austria, we'd have more options. From there, Switzerland, Italy, maybe even Spain. The plan was simple. Buy tickets, board the train, ride quietly across the border. But as we stepped toward the station entrance, a police officer turned toward us, and his eyes locked onto mine. The moment our eyes met, I knew we had seconds. Seconds before the officer recognized us. Seconds before he reached for his radio. Seconds before everything we'd risked fell apart. The train station was too open, too many people, too many exits, but none of them mattered if we got caught right here, right now. I grabbed Dieter's arm. Don't run. Walk. Running would have been suicide. We were dressed like workers, not fugitives, and as long as we acted like we belonged, we had a chance. We stepped forward, slow, controlled, like we were just 2 tired men heading home after a long shift. The officer narrowed his eyes, his head tilting slightly. I forced myself to yawn, rubbing my face like I hadn't slept in days. Then, he looked away. Not convinced. Not yet. But not sure enough to act. We slipped past him, moving toward the ticket machines. I could still feel his gaze on my back, and I knew we were walking on a razor's edge. We bought 2 tickets to Salzburg, our hands shaking slightly as we fed the money into the machine. Cash. No cards. Nothing traceable. The train was already at the platform, doors hissing open, passengers boarding slowly. I could see the border police patrolling near the tracks. Checking faces. Checking IDs. We needed to move. We stepped onto the train, sliding into seats near the back of the carriage. Dieter exhaled sharply. We might actually do this. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure yet. The train lurched forward, pulling out of Munich, heading south toward Austria. For the first time in 2 days, we allowed ourselves to breathe. The lights outside blurred as we gained speed, the city fading behind us. Then, a voice crackled over the train's intercom. "Attention passengers, this is a security announcement. Due to an ongoing police investigation, all passengers must present identification upon request. Border officers will be conducting checks prior to arrival in Salzburg." Dieter turned to me, eyes wide. "They know we're here. We had 15 minutes before we reached the border. 15 minutes before they started checking IDs. We had no fake passports. No disguises left. No second chances. There was only one option." I looked toward the back of the train, where the last car connected to the next. A small service door. Emergency exit only. Dieter followed my gaze. "You're insane." I was. But it was the only way. Jumping into the unknown. We moved fast, slipping through the carriage doors into the empty service compartment. The metal walls rattled around us, the wind roaring through the tiny cracks where the train cars connected. I grabbed the emergency handle. Looked at Dieter. He hesitated. "You sure about this?" I wasn't. But we had no choice. I yanked the handle. The door slammed open, and we were hit by a wall of freezing wind. The ground raced past below us, a blur of trees and darkness. We had seconds. I jumped first. The world flipped and shattered as I hit the ground, rolling through wet grass, my body tumbling like a rag doll. Pain. Everywhere. Somewhere behind me, Dieter hit the ground too, his scream lost in the night. I forced myself up, ignoring the sharp, burning pain in my leg. The train was gone, disappearing into the distance. No sirens. No dogs. No spotlights. Just the quiet hum of the Austrian countryside around us. Dieter groaned, pushing himself onto his elbows. I reached out, pulled him up. We were alive. And more importantly, we were free. We limped toward the nearest road, sticking to the shadows, heads low. We were in Austria now. No longer in German territory. But fugitives nonetheless. We weren't safe. Not yet. But we had done the impossible. We had escaped Straubing. We had outrun the manhunt. And as long as we kept moving, no one would ever find us again.